Success transcends cities. As one of the world's most respected business leaders, I know what it takes. Join me now as I sit down with fellow leaders and we share our insights into how you can be successful. My name is Jeffrey Hayzlett, and this is All Business.
Now, everyone knows that making money is the goal for all business, but today's guest goes beyond the usual rules of capitalism for good, and we love that. Eva Yazhari is the CEO and founder of Beyond Capitalfund, a fund dedicated to raise up those at the bottom of the economic pyramid in places like India and Africa. Now, Eva recently released her first book. Awesome. I just think that's great. I've got 4, Eva, so catch up. Come on, let's make it happen. The book is called The Good Your Money Can Do, and I love that title, love the book. It's currently #1 new release on Amazon Futures trading list. Eva, welcome to All Business with Jeffrey Hayzlett.
Jeffrey, it is so great to have you. You have incredible energy, and you just make me want to go out there and write 3 more.
Good. Let's do that, because we're all, that's what we're all supposed to be doing. If we're not here doing good, what's the purpose? I really think that's important. Now, as I looked at your background, you have a Wall Street background. All right. So what got you interested in what you call in the book impact investing?
So it's a great question. I do have a traditional finance background. I worked in the hedge fund investing world. I was very lucky to focus on the activist hedge fund managers, Bill Ackman, Carl Icahn, Nelson Peltz, those that rattle for change. And I was really inspired by their model to think about what more money could do, because really impact investing is just a reframing of how our money can be utilized to express our desires and intentions for a better society. And so I took that model and I kind of tweaked it a little bit and decided to focus on investing in purpose-driven leaders who are thinking about all stakeholders and therefore could have social and environmental returns baked into their business models.
In one of our groups, it's called the Hero Club, which is after one of my books, The Hero Factor. And we're big on values. We always try to put people first, above profits. Profits are important without question. What values do you look for when you invest?
Well, when I invest, I first, take a step back and think about what my values are. And I'm very focused on gender and racial equity at the moment. It's been a focus of mine for over a decade, but particularly with what we've seen in 2020, 900,000 women dropping out of the workforce in September 2020, all of the numbers are really pointing to the need to have a more inclusive society and inclusive markets. And the fact that there's a massive market opportunity when you open up businesses that are catering to female consumers or run by women, and you're opening up the pool of ideas. But those are really the 2 areas that I'm focused on personally in my portfolio. But the great thing about impact investing is that it is for everyone. It is for anybody that cares about homelessness or poverty or climate action, or is thinking about, how to bring more local food supply to their neighborhoods. And it opens up a large discussion about what more our money can really do.
When COVID hit, we saw a lot of women leave the workplace. What was your first thought when you started to hear about that?
I was deeply sad. I luckily did not have to deal with some of the challenges that many women did. I ended up having support for my children living in Texas. The schools were open. I got a lot of the silver linings of COVID, also being able to not travel as a working woman and focus on my family. But I know the challenges that many other women face. And I have to say, I was sad and I was also angry that we haven't built a world where women can truly thrive. And as the mother of a daughter, I have really been tenacious in how I now think about where I invest. And I know that 77% of my current investment portfolio is managed by men. And I would like to make it more equal, because I think that women can also bring great ideas to the table.
Basing your investments on ESGs, or what is known as environmental, social, corporate governance practices, is a really big trend right now. In your mind, Eva, is that enough?
It is not enough. While I think it's an excellent toe dip for investors, it's an easy way in. Almost every advisor or 401k will have an ESG fund or sustainable fund. It's not enough because it is a passive strategy, which means that it is only screening out for specific types of companies. Exactly.
Checking the box. That's what they're doing. They're doing it for a PR reason or social, and not so much. It's to keep people off their ass or their back, and so they're checking a box. What more should they be doing?
Well, they should be thinking about how they are acting holistically. So I use an example of a very large company that sells sneakers that we all know in my book. And while they've done an excellent job with aligning with specific initiatives, particularly Black Lives Matter in their marketing, there really isn't much going on when you think about the environmental impact of the millions of shoes that they create and sell, likely on a quarterly basis, and how that will end up, those shoes will end up after many uses in landfills. Furthermore, that company also came into light a couple of weeks ago in the news for working with forced labor groups in China. And so I think the key is really to just for companies to truly and fully walk the talk, to think about all stakeholders, to take the extra time and energy. It is not something that they will need to, like change their business model around. It's just something where they need to dedicate and be intentional. And once they do that, it just will fall in line with the fact that what you're saying, balanced capitalism. Impact investing is not about tearing down or replacing the current financial system. It's just about engaging that system to do more. And that's what companies need to do.
I heard recently it shouldn't just be about generosity. It should be about solving injustice. And that's a big theme for you. It really, truly is, isn't it?
Absolutely. Well, I make the argument that we have a moral imperative to do good. And there are a couple of reasons for that. It's not just charity. It's not just doing unto others. It's not just about thinking about your neighbors. There is even a component of enlightened self-interest, which I talk about in my book, where when we do good for others, our lives are also improved. And part of the power of impact investing and using your money as a force for good and business as a force for good is really feeling good and feeling aligned as human beings. And so the concept of the moral imperative that we have extends beyond just thinking about the problems. And it's really thinking about the solutions and how many solutions where there are no trade-offs. I think when people think about impact investing, they think that you have to have concessionary returns or not make the same amount of money. We're not living in that world anymore. We're actually living in the perfect time where we have tremendous opportunity to make money and do good in almost every single asset class. Public equities, public debt, private markets. I'm a venture capital investor. And to be honest, I'd rather be investing in the emerging markets that I focus on than, some of the deals done here in the US, because I see tremendous opportunity. So really what it comes down to is knowing that it is important, but also focusing on the incredible solutions rather than the problem.
Let's talk about the book, okay? Because I always like to make sure we have great authors talk about their book. Why did you feel you needed to write The Good Your Money Can Do?
Well, Jeffrey, I've been an impact investor for 12 years, and I have been investing in Africa and India. My family lived in Africa in the 50s and 60s, so I have family ties there. And that is my focus area. But I would sit at dinner tables, whether it was in Switzerland, where I previously lived, or Los Angeles or Dallas, where I'm currently based. And I could tell the people around the table had capital, but nobody's capital was aligned with their values. Nobody was even thinking about it. And on the other side of my life, I was involved in very deep networks of impact investing practitioners, large family offices. But it seemed like everybody thought you had to be a billionaire, or you had to have a $250,000 check, or you had to have the right advisor to be an impact investor. And if you didn't have any of that, it was impossible. And that's really why I wrote the book. I wrote the book to get the message out to everyone, from somebody that has a private wealth advisor at a private bank to somebody that has $100 per month to invest, for them to know that they can be an impact investor too, and to create a playbook for them. So the second part of my book is essentially a guidebook, define your values, recognize the importance of living according to your values and how that can come through in all your resources. And then a deep, deep, deep dive into what impact investing is, alongside the fact that we all need to create community around this type of work, and then think about our consumer choices and being an active citizen to line up with those values. And so that was the main reason that I was inspired to write this book.
And, it could be $10 a week. It could be $100 a week. It could be, hey, I'm not going to buy those shoes. I'm going to invest that over here in this side, or go without. Or, hey, maybe I can get some pre-owned shoes. Maybe even those. A lot of those sneakers go for some big money. So there's lots of ways you could do it. I recently listened, in fact, with clothes. My daughter's in the clothes business, fashion business, and she talks about the energy used to be able to create clothes in the fashion industry is amazing. So, well, you talk a lot about in the book and also in your podcast about opening up the conversation around money. I think this is a really good topic. What did you mean by that? And then I have my own thoughts about what you thought you meant.
Yeah. Well, money is it's a taboo subject. It's stigmatized for many particular groups. You said it really well, where you said, even if you have $100, per month, or you small amount of money, or $10 a day, or not buying that coffee. I think that one of the groups that money is stigmatized for are groups that don't have large amounts of capital to invest, that are probably not talking about investing on a regular basis, when in reality, those individuals can open a small brokerage account and have access to ESG funds and sustainable funds, which are a good starting point to impact. What's powerful about this is that when you start impact investing, you flip your narrative around money. So you're not only talking about the financial return, you're not only talking about the alpha and the beta and all the Greeks that I learned really well working on Wall Street. You're talking about the impact that your money is having. And that allows for a more open conversation about money. The same goes for women. Women, I think, are not comfortable with financial terminology. I would say that probably, living my life as the finance expert in my family, but then, speaking to my female friends, I know that this is definitely the case. And so the fact that women can talk about the impact that their money is having starts to open those doors. And then the third group is children. So I actually do put aside $250 a month for my kids into an environmental ESG. And then I talked to my son about it. He started the environmental club in his first grade classroom. He loves to talk about Trash Island. And I think that this is another way to engage the next generation as well around money and open up that discussion.
Now, you mentioned earlier, and I've talked about this, that you've been investing heavily in people in Africa and India. Explain why you do that and tell us about any success stories.
Absolutely. Well, I do have family ties in Africa. And so I think my risk perception of investing in an emerging market was very different than maybe some others, would have. They think it's, very far away, it's risky, people don't have very high income, so how could they possibly afford any products? When in reality, there is a study that's been done that shows that even individuals living on less than $4 a day have a budget for healthcare and energy access and financial inclusion and agriculture tools and waste and sanitation, which are the 5 sectors that we're focused on in our fund. When I market sized for my most recent capital raise, we were looking at 1 billion consumers in 4 countries living on less than $15 a day. But again, they still have the budgets and the desire and the need for access. I think where the true opportunity is for our investments comes in the area of access and lacking access. So we doubled our money while improving access to affordable on-demand eye care in India when we exited that business, because there was nowhere to go get glasses or a cataract surgery in the region. And an ophthalmologist said, I'm going to create this company. And, people showed up, and it's still a growing and thriving business. A couple other success stories are Kasha, a women's health e-commerce platform based in Rwanda and Kenya, which is growing and scaling quite quickly. And what they're doing is they're creating an aspirational brand around women's health where they're selling soaps and lotions, and then, women's health products that women buy every single month. But they're creating a way for women to not have a stigma attached to their health, which is a underlying social issue in pretty much all of the countries where we invest. But that business is, touching upon really significant revenue, and has distributed over 1 million products since they started 4 or 5 years ago. So yeah, incredible innovations. And I think that that's really what will solve some of the most pressing problems that we have.
So you mentioned a couple of times the family ties back to Africa, and I believe it started with your grandfather. Tell me about how you got those family ties all the way back.
Yeah, I thought it was so normal growing up, but learned that it wasn't, and it was also very hard to get there. So my family's from the Midwest of the U.S. I'm third generation American. So my grandparents were born in the U.S., but my paternal grandfather was a medical doctor, and his first wife passed. He had 4 children. He remarried a spunky lady who was, incredible, and I think very service-minded. And they had some connections also through the Catholic Church, but more so kind of friends. And they decided to open a health clinic in a remote part of Tanzania. And I've been to Tanzania, and it's not Dar es Salaam. It's not a major city. It was a very remote part. So they took a steamship from New York City to Cape Town, and then drove a airstream up from Cape Town all the way to Tanzania, and lived there for about a decade. I think the last story, though, that really inspired my work, and I encourage everybody who's listening to think about maybe one story in their life that shapes their values, is my aunt, who was adopted because her mother died in childbirth. And for me, healthcare is a really important sector to invest in. It's what I'm drawn to. And 30% of my current portfolio is invested in healthcare, and particularly women's health is an area of focus.
In India, India is becoming the world's 5th largest economy by 2024. It's overtaking both the UK and France. Where should we be focusing there?
Yeah, well, I would say that investors should definitely think about where not to focus. There are a number of bubbles. India, over the past decade, has developed its own thriving investment ecosystem, particularly with angels that have a lot of capital that they can't take out of the country, and they're investing into own businesses. So I've, been watching kind of ag tech, ed tech. I'm not sure they're the right places to invest in India right now, but I think the most sound and long-term profit generating companies are need to haves. And that's what we focus on at Beyond Capital. It's healthcare innovations. We're invested in one of 2 healthcare drone companies in the country. And that is, I think, expected to be a big winner in our portfolio.
I love that. Need to have. I love need to have kind of services, because you focus on what everybody's got to have or needs to have every single day. It's kind of like that razor blade theory. Hey, what about the rest of the BRIC countries like Brazil, Russia, China? Do you see yourself increasing any kind of investments there, or maybe in Latin America?
We don't. And it's not because I don't like those markets. It's because as an early stage investor, we are very hands-on, and we love to be hands-on. We believe that we're investing in people. So for example, in our slide deck, it's not just the company logos, it's the people's faces behind the companies. And that to us is extremely important, to be hands-on with our portfolio companies. Our CEOs call me all the time, even though I'm literally on the other side of the planet, and we help them succeed. So for us to know our markets extremely well, go deep into the deal flow, we have to review thousands of companies to make 20 investments in an investment period. So we really have to focus in on the regions where we are oriented. But there are a lot of other great impact investors that do similar things, particularly in Latin America.
Now, one last thing, I noticed you're big into paleo diet, right? And I love bacon. Does that count?
Yes, you can do keto on bacon.
I set that up. I love to talk about bacon anytime. It's a sizzling subject for me. I eat anything with bacon. I tell people I'm a vegetarian. I eat all things that eat vegetables. So I'm huge on paleo, and I love bacon right up the top. What's your favorite?
My favorite paleo recipe would probably be, Oh my goodness. It is so hard to answer that question. It would probably be some sort of, turkey meatball with vegetables and squash. It's not that hard to eat paleo. We do a lot of tacos with cassava flour tortillas as well. I think in today's world, it's actually quite easy. And I just do it for a high performance lifestyle. My husband does it for health reasons, and it's been transformative for him.
Well, fantastic. Well, I talk about being transformative, all the things that you're doing, Eva. Eva Yazhari, she's the CEO and founder of Beyond Capitalfund. And make sure you get out there and get the book, The Good Your Money Can Do. Don't forget, it's available on Amazon and anywhere that you can find a book, and certainly through go check it out in our C-Suite book club as well. The Good Your Money Can Do, and you want to do good if you got money. That's the name of the game right there. Eva, thanks so much for joining us right here on All Business with Jeffrey Hayzlett. Hey, at the end of every show, I like to talk about the things I learn. Well, money is good, but giving is better. And not just giving, but being able to right the wrongs, or to give money where your good money can go to good work. That's what I learned today. And hey, don't forget that when you make it to the top, when you have the ability to change other people's lives, you can and you should. That's the name of the game. We all have a responsibility to do just that. And so there's that famous saying, when you make it to the top, don't forget to send the elevator back down for everybody else. That's what I learned, or at least was reminded of, right here on this show. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time on All Business with Jeffrey Hayzlett, right here on C-Suite TV.
Welcome to C-Suite TV Insights. I'm JJ Ramberg. My guest today has been trading in the market for over 15 years and founded a company whose motto is Traders Helping Traders. He set out to make trading as easy as possible and remove as many obstacles as possible. Daryl Martin is the founder and CEO of Apex Trader Funding, and he'll talk to us about why he started the company. Welcome, Daryl.
Hey, thank you for having me on. So appreciate it.
Yeah, we're so happy to have you. Well, tell us a little bit about the company and why you started it.
The company, like I said, is apextraderfunding.com, and we fund traders. So anybody who wants to get into the market. And what I found is a lot of people, one of their biggest obstacles was they were afraid to trade because they didn't want to lose their life savings. They didn't want to blow the kid's college account, retirement accounts, or they just didn't want to risk what money they had. And so what we did is we set out an education company and a trader funding company. On the tools page of Apex Trader Funding, we have our education company, Apex Investing, where people can learn how to trade, but then they need the capital to trade. Maybe they don't have enough capital, or like I said, they don't want to risk the capital they have, either way. And so we set up an evaluation. And what you do is you go in and, once you learn how to trade, which I said we teach it, we have a whole free program that teaches you how to trade. And once you make so much without losing so much, then we actually put all the money up and you take none of the risk. And you're able to get 90% of the profits. So we take the risk and we share in the profits. And what we're doing is we're looking for really good traders. That's why we're always looking for those great traders. And we've literally made the rules as easy as possible. We've grown to be the largest trading funding company. We started just a couple years ago, but we're bigger than companies that started 10, 15 years ago. We paid out more than double of any company that's ever existed in just 2 years. Paid out over $15 million to traders.
What do you attribute the success to?
So I'd say one is our evaluation is very simple. I actually started with other trader funding companies. I tried them out. I was even an affiliate for one of them, but they had so many bogus rules. Like one company capped you out on how much you could make. And then they just cut you off. That's because they were just making money on fees. So they didn't want people making money. Other companies literally try to trip you up in every way they can, so that way you have to pay the evaluation fee over and over and over and over again. And so we made it where it's very simple. I mean, we had 25,000 people pass last month. We have access to multiple platforms, mobile platforms. You can trade on your phone, you can trade on the web, you can trade on desktop applications. And then, just so not only having the right model that's focused on, our goal is to actually pay out traders. That's why we paid out so much. But also, I think that we just have a great team. So we have a great technology team. We have a great customer service team, operations team that takes care of our customers.
So if somebody's out there listening and saying, okay, I want in, I get this is easier, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to learn, how much money do I need to start with?
You could start with as little as $150.
Wow.
So, and right now, and we have sales going on all the time. So like Save 50 is an ongoing sale, and you can use that coupon code and get half off your valuation. So like really like $75, $80. So I mean, that's literally what it starts to get going. And then like when you get funded, like let's say we give you $3,000 of risk capital, but $50,000 in trading margin, you don't put up any of that money. So there's just an account fee, which is, like $85.
And you coined the term diagnostic investing. Explain that to me.
Yeah, diagnostic trading. It's basically looking at the market's fundamentals, statistics, and looking at the internals of the market, specifically looking at implied volatility and looking at price action. And so it's sort of, diagnosing what the market is doing versus using a lot of companies out there are focused on indicators, this moving average and this stochastic and this MACD and whatever. Well, those are all like past. They're not present. You're not going to get future, of course. But you can get very present, as close to real time as possible as the market's printing orders. And so what we did is we made it where instead of having to read all these numbers that you'd have to read to know all the stuff, we basically make it where all the numbers are calculated behind the scenes and it paints like a box on the chart. And if there's a blue thing inside the box, you have a trade. You buy above the high of that bar. And my 10-year-old trades. Literally, he wants to make some money for playing roadblocks or whatever. And he'll come over and he'll trade, make a couple $100 like in 15 minutes and then go back and spend the money on his roadblocks. So it can be done. So I'd say it's easier for a 10-year-old than somebody who is older because they just follow the rules. We sort of tend to bring our baggage in sometimes and we got to break some bad habits. And, just wanting to push the button and not wanting to be wrong. And so holding on to a trade too long versus just getting out, or wanting to make more and getting greedy and not getting out when we should, stuff like that we have. He's just like, okay, take the trade. Okay, I made my goal. I'm done. I'm going.
You need the Roblox incentive. That's what you need.
Exactly.
There's something to develop next.
That's our whole next course, Roblox trading. So
before I let you leave, I want to get one last question in, which is, I've seen you interviewed before. Your big hat, your big cowboy hat. You're a rancher.
Yeah.
Right? You're not a trader by background. You are a rancher. So what got you into trading?
I went to this Get Motivated seminar that had a bunch of famous speakers at it. And there was some guy talking about options. And from my family, there's no investing going on. Okay. Come from a very poor background. I was like, I want to know more about that. And so I bought the guy's $500 course, and I'm not going to say it made me money, but it got me into it. Then I found out I was going to, have a daughter. And so I was like, I got to make more money. And I was working the 9-to-5 job and all that stuff. And, I had a decent salary, but not the kind that I wanted to be able to make for a family. And so I dove into it. I found mentors. I went to seminars. I read books. And I studied for a year, and a year later, it was costing me too much to stay at my job because I was making more trading. And so I quit my job and began trading.
Wow.
And, but yeah, my daughter was the incentive for that. And she was actually the reason that we built the company, because I started recording videos to teach her how to trade in case something ever happened to me. One of my friends wanted the videos and he's like, we should turn this into a website. And I was like, I never even thought of that. And I was like, okay. And we did it, and it now blew up. And now we have, 60,000 members.
Amazing. All right. Well, Apex Trader Funding. Daryl Martin, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us today. And thank everyone out there for watching C-Suite TV Insights. I'm JJ Ramberg, and we'll see you next time.
everybody, and welcome to Bestseller TV. I'm Taryn Winter-Brill. We're here with Gary McGrath. He is the author of A CEO's Journey, The 7 Steps of Intentional Leadership, Making Good Bosses into Great Leaders. It's great to have you with us.
Oh, thank you, Taryn. It's good to be here.
I should say Dr. Gary.
Dr. Gary, I go by that because I got my doctorate later in life, and when I finished my engineering degree in college, I said I'm never going back to school because I was kind of burned out.
Right.
But I found out later on that I'm actually a lifelong learner. So I loved to go back to school, got my master's, got my doctorate in my 50s. Yeah.
That's incredible. It's never too late. A lot of
never
people think.
Too late.
This is your second book?
It is.
Great. And the first one was on leadership as well?
The first was on sales leadership, was kind of a how-to book, but this one is more all-encompassing to leadership specifically, yeah.
Okay, well the title is A CEO's Journey. Is this your journey?
Partly, yes. I think that every book has a part of the author in it, no matter what it is. And this particular journey is because most CEOs are challenged in the work that they do every day and leading an organization. And the biggest thing, I think, is that they're all alone. They're by themselves. So it's really hard for them to find people to confide in and work with. And we all need somebody to talk to. And this book is about a CEO that really struggles in that journey and hires a coach to help him. And it's something that is becoming a lot more popular now, but it's been around a long time.
Right.
And I just think CEOs and executives should always consider and can understand how 2 heads are always better than 1. We say that, and then we don't live it.
Right, because we should say the book is sort of laid out in this scenario between Karen and Paul.
Karen's
the coach.
Karen's the coach, somebody that Paul had worked for in the past. It's really interesting because it's positioned where he's struggling with everything. With his job, with his family, with his kids. He's struggling with everything and doesn't know where to turn. And went back into his history, and Karen was somebody he had worked with in the past and somebody he trusted, and called her up and said, help.
Yeah, SOS. But that said, you bring up a good point. How do you go about finding a coach? I mean, he'd worked with Karen in the past, but what if you've never worked with someone in the past you trust? Where do you begin?
There are coaches everywhere nowadays, but typically I think that if you just ask around and ask other CEOs who you're working with, those kinds of personal referrals are probably the best way to find a good coach.
Mm-hmm. Right. And before we get into the 7 steps, tell us a little bit more about your background, your professional background.
I got an ROTC scholarship at the University of Connecticut and got an engineering degree in mechanical and metallurgical engineering and went right into the Army. And when I was 25 years old, I had the first opportunity to actually command a unit of 120 soldiers.
Wow.
So with 3 older brothers that were in the military, all enlisted, and I was the first that went into the military as an officer, they made it very clear to me, listen to your non-commissioned officers. So I kept my mouth shut, and I listened to these very experienced sergeants and had a pretty successful career. But I learned in that experience that the culture of the Army wasn't the right fit for me. My whole family was Navy. My dad, my 4 brothers, my son were all Navy. And we have 108 years of military service amongst us. And so that's where I began my journey, and then went into manufacturing with my engineering degree in Procter & Gamble and Scott Paper. Got a lot of really good management leadership training. Again, it didn't feel right to me yet. So I started my first business, and I worked for Stephen Covey for the Covey Leadership Center and Ken Blanchard teaching situational leadership. And my wife told me that I needed to get a real job, so I went back into business. And I learned at that point that in order to really do something, and I didn't know what this something was yet, I needed to have my own model, my own leadership model, my own leadership approach. So that's when I went back into the business world and then started working on my master's and my doctorate. And over a 5.5 years period while I was working, I finished my doctorate.
Okay.
And then started on this journey of developing my own leadership approach.
Within sales?
No, it was executive leadership.
Okay.
Sales leadership was just one area that I know something about. But I have, with my engineering and mechanical engineering background and manufacturing, I have operations background and did a lot of things that all fed into the culmination of the 7 steps of intentional leadership.
How did you decide on 7 with this incredible comprehensive background?
Well, I guess we're influenced by those people that come before us. And Stephen Covey, I taught the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Right.
Really what happened was this. So Tara and I was teaching all these people all of these things, emotional intelligence and meeting management and all these skills. And I'd done some leadership training with this one organization, and I started thinking, if I could put this into some kind of a consolidated model. So my web developer, who's a good friend of mine for the last 10 years, I sat down with him and I said, I want to put this into a model, and we started to line it out, and I wanted to fix this into like 5 or 7 or 8 steps, and 7 just seemed to work. And it allowed me to create this model where the first 3 steps are self-development, step 4 is the crossover step between self and team, and then 5, 6, and 7 are team development. So I have this model that helps, again, in this journey of leadership development that allows people a model to really assess where their leadership capabilities are.
Right.
I can explain it in 5 minutes, the 7 steps, the components of each, and then let the arguments begin. Because every model is flawed. And I love to hear people tell me where the flaws are, because it just makes the model better.
So I'm curious, when you set out to write this book, the other books on the market, how is your model different?
I think that what's different about this is when you get into the model, I like Simon Sinek's model when he talks about the what, the how, and the why, the golden circle, he calls it, right? And at the center is the why we're on this earth, or the why a company is in business. And people get that, and they know the what they're going to do, but they don't always know how. And what I've found is when people are struggling with being good bosses, they're struggling with how. They're struggling with, how do I do this? How do I lead in this situation? And what we train, what we teach, what we develop are leaders on the how. And it has to be based on the culture that they're in, the situation, the personalities. And a lot of leadership books talk about that complexity. We get down to the fundamental parts of what is absolutely required in order to be effective as a leader and a manager. So the 7 steps is that foundation.
You could be considered a coach then, Dr. Gary, no?
Yeah, so the coaching, I do coaching with executive leaders, and we always start with the 7 steps. The first step is purpose, and under purpose there's 3 components. And the first component is personal mission. People say, so I ask leaders when I talk to them, do you have a personal mission statement? And most people will say, no, I don't. I say, well, what do you stand for? And people can kind of start to describe that.
Right.
But it's not in writing. And the idea of having it in writing and having a personal mission statement in writing is really a key for a leader. It's a key for all of us. But the reason it's so important for a leader is you can't have a bad day. You can work on things for months and destroy it in a moment with the wrong behavior, the wrong statement, the wrong approach to something. And what's my anchor? What keeps me focused on who I want to be every single day? It's my mission statement.
Right.
So that at the end of the day, if I have a really bad day, if everything just seems to go wrong, I've got clients yelling at me, employees yelling at me, I'm missing goals, things aren't happening. But if I can look in the mirror at the end of the day and I can say, I lived my mission today, that's a great day.
Would you say that's the biggest challenge or the biggest void you're finding, or that you've found in the C-suite, that there's been this lack of a mission statement or a purpose, so to speak?
A purpose for them, yes. When I was doing this work with the Covey Leadership Center in the 90s, about 8 to 10% of the people, the population, had personal mission statements of some form. Today it's 1%. And to me, that's sad.
Right.
People are going around life not knowing what they stand for. And leadership and the attraction of followers to leaders is based on their authentic ability to tell people what they stand for.
Right.
Well, if you're not consistent with that, if it's not clear, then people aren't going to follow you.
Right. So if you're the boss and you don't know what you stand for, how do you relay that?
Why would I want to be around you?
Exactly.
So what people do is they survive.
Yeah.
That creates mediocrity.
You get by.
You get by. And that's why 67, 68% of the people in our workforce today, based on Gallup, are either just going through the motions and they're disengaged or actively disengaged in the work that they do.
Can you give us any real life examples, Dr. Gary, where there's been a lack of leadership or a lack of coaching, and then they were introduced to a coach and we really saw an ROI?
Well, yeah, so we have this leadership development program, the Leader Step 7, which is based on the 7 steps of intentional leadership. It's a 9-month program. And part of that 9-month program is coaching. So I'll give you an example of how coaching can work at multiple levels, because we teach coaching as a core skill to our leaders, because we want to go in, teach, develop, and get out, because the organization has to run itself. So there were these 2 branch managers that were working in this company, and they were resisting a new service that was being brought out. It was a new service that was higher margins, it was great revenue, but it was new to them. So they kept resisting it. And they were relatively inexperienced general managers of these branches. So their coaches on my team, which we call Statarians, my company's name is Statarius, so call them Statarians. Our Statarian coaches were working with them and saying, you really need to support this. The vice president of sales was talking to them, you need to support this. And they were kind of focused themselves with each other and supporting each other, saying, we're not going to support this. It was kind of this thing. Well, part of the program is also these cohorts, these teams, this team of 3. So there's these two general managers and a 3rd general manager. And the 3rd general manager, who was a very experienced general manager, sat there in one meeting with them one day, and they're complaining and complaining and complaining, and he's just very patiently waiting and listening. And they've been taught, and here's the coaching question. He said to them, are you finished yet?
Right.
And they're like, what? He says, you guys just don't get it. Here's the deal. You've got people trying to help you make money. You've got people trying to help you do a better job. You've got people around you that can support you to bring this service out, and you won't do it. You need to get your heads out of the sand and get to work on this. And he kind of got in his face. So think about this. You had a vice president that talked to him, their personal coaches that talked to him.
Right.
And then their team coach that talked to them that was part of this whole program. I get a text from the vice president of sales saying, Gary, I don't know what you told these guys, but they've come around. And I'm sitting there reading this text, I'm like, well, I didn't tell them anything. My coaches told them.
Right, you weren't in the meeting, it was your coach.
It wasn't my meeting, but it was the process. We don't train coaches, we develop coaches. It's a process. And we don't train leaders, we develop leaders. It's a process. And if that one decision by those 2 general managers to implement that earlier than it would have happened made more money for them than they'll ever spend on leadership.
And you mentioned Leader Step. Does that go hand in hand with the 7 steps of intentional leadership?
So what you have is the 7 steps of intentional leadership is the foundational model to use to develop leaders. Leader Step 7 is our 9-month leadership process. And when we look at how do we take a raw material, a leader or manager that's never been trained before or has had some training, and quite frankly, we've had people go through our program that have had a lot of leadership training, and they've said this is totally different than anything that they've had.
Excellent.
And the reason is this, is it combines an understanding of culture, application daily, and training with coaching and teamwork development all into one. So Leader Step 7, you first select the people in your organization, you assess them to understand what the base is. We then do coaching and mentoring with them. We do teamwork development with them, train them, and then we have what we call job work, which is homework on the job. And it's kind of the holy grail of what we do with our teams to get them to apply this training, this development. The hardest part about anybody coming from the outside or even inside to develop leadership is how to get them to apply it.
Right, execute.
How do you execute? We know how to do that. And we've demonstrated it with hundreds of people in multiple companies over the last 5 years that have created absolutely remarkable results. An example, quite a few companies are in the construction world in the North Carolina and South Florida area. And these companies can't find people. Unemployment's like less than 4%. So you have to keep the people you've got.
Right.
People will leave for an extra $10,000 a year.
Right.
In these companies that we've developed, their retention is over 97%.
Wow, what a track record, Dr. Gary. Final thought, I'm curious, what about the CEO who says, I don't need a coach? I have a whole C-suite of people helping me and our business is doing well. What would you say to that?
Good luck.
Okay. Fair enough.
I'm not.
Fair point.
So here's one of the things when I interview CEOs that's very, very important is Actually, Jim Collins talked about it in his book, Good to Great. And that's where I get the idea of making good bosses into great leaders with compassion and accountability. There's one value that I look for in a CEO if I'm going to work with them: humility. If they don't have a little bit of modesty and humility, if they sit there and go, we've got this, I'm good. I said, I'm working with a company right now that has had the best year they've ever had. And the CEO is talking to them about, we need to make sure that we continue to challenge ourselves to get better and better and better. Because just about the time you think you're good is when things go down. And what I learned at Procter & Gamble back in the 80s when I was working it there is the one thing that they did that I learned in that organization is they were always, always developing skills of management leadership in their people.
Right, for sustainability.
For sustainability.
Because there's disruption every day of the week.
And let's take a look at that company today.
Right.
If you don't believe me, just look at where their stock is and where their growth is and what they're doing. Very, very successful long-term company because they're always developing their people.
Right.
And that's the biggest mistake I think a lot of people get into, is they either don't believe you can build leaders or make leaders. They don't know how. And that's why when we talk about how, I said, well, let me ask you a few questions. The step 7 on execution is one of the things is meeting cadence. Do you have daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annual meetings? There are different purposes for those. What are the purposes? Are you doing this? So I can go in an organization and ask 10 questions and get a pretty good idea in an hour how they're doing.
Right. Yeah, and it all comes down to complacency. Dr. Gary, it's been terrific. We could go on and on and on.
Yes, we could.
It's a fascinating topic. Congratulations on the journey and the leader step, and we look forward to more.
Thanks. I think my journey is just starting.
Right? We hope so.
Thank you.
If you'd like more information on the journey and the book, please check out our website, c-suitebookclub.com. That's c-suitebookclub.com. I'm Taryn Winter-Brill. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time right here on Bestseller TV.